So this is a big chance, let me say so. This is a big opportunity for us to retake as many territories as possible. And of course, we put the maximum goal for us to return to the territories that have been recognized by the international community in 1991. But you never can guarantee. The only thing that I can say you that there are millions of Ukrainians here who will fight Russia and who will fight for our independence and sovereignty and to return all the people and territory.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with Lucy Fisher for Times Radio. I'm delighted to be joined today by Iuliia Mendel, who was President Zelensky's press secretary from 2019 to 2021. Prior to that, Iuliia worked as a journalist for TV and print media, writing for outlets including the New York Times. She's been living in Ukraine throughout the war and her husband volunteered for the Ukrainian army. Iuliia has also written a book entitled The Fight of Our Lives, My Time with Zelensky, Ukraine's Battle for Democracy and What It Means for the World. Iuliia, welcome.
Lucy, thank you for having me and thank you for raising the topic of Ukraine and the Russian war here.
So, Iuliia, just to start with, can you give us your take on how you think the war is going in Ukraine? There's obviously a lot of anticipation around the counteroffensive we're expecting to start. What's your assessment of the slight delay it feels in that and how likely that is to be successful?
Lucy, you are right that after months of huge destruction and brutal atrocities of Russian army here in Ukraine, and after some successes of Ukrainians after the occupation of Kyiv, Kharkiv and Kherson region, there is some kind of a positioning war where the front line already has fixed at the eastern and southern regions of Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine is preparing for counteroffensive, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of efforts, because there are a lot of conditions to be prepared as well as possible. So right now, every day, Russia shells around 8-9 regions of Ukraine. It's about a quarter of Ukraine, and there is about 17% of Ukrainian territory under Russian occupation. It feels bad. A lot of our people suffer. 37% of Ukrainians know someone who has died or was wounded, or have their relative who has died or wounded at war. And the war is already very hybrid. It's information war, cyber war, and economic war too.
And so once this counteroffensive does get on the way, is this really the Ukraine forces' last chance to try and push back the boundaries before we might see the conflict frozen for a much longer period, or potentially, at some point reach negotiations? Is this the final push to retake Ukrainian territory?
Lucy, it's a very good question. And I think it depends on the determination of Ukrainians. As you see, Ukrainians as the people, as the volunteers, and as the soldiers there, the front lines, we are very determined to stand for the Ukraine's independence and Ukraine's sovereignty. So probably everybody has heard about the name of Bakhmut, a small town in Donbass. And look, it's really not something significant, but Ukrainian soldiers have been standing for this small town for around 10 months already. And with all the awfulness of Russian army, with this Wagner mercenaries private military group, they still cannot conquer this even small town. So the thing is that we are very determined. The counteroffensive really demands a lot of conditions. First of all, it's weather. And you know that spring weather is a very difficult one to counterattack and to take and retake the territories. The second thing is, of course, the delivery of weaponry, and the war is very active. So we run out of ammunition, and actually Ukraine has never been aggressor. So we have not developed really a lot of military weapons production in our country. So there were delays, and we are waiting for some weaponry to come. The third one is, of course, about the people. Russia has many more people, many more, soldiers, and many more people who are taken from prisons. So they try to conscript more and more people, and it also takes efforts, to stay here, to stand there, and to fight all the time. So this is a big chance, let me say so. This is a big opportunity for us to retake as many territories as possible. And of course, we put the maximum goal for us to return to the territories that have been recognized by the international community in 1991. But you never can guarantee. The only thing that I can say you that there are millions of Ukrainians here who will fight Russia and who will fight for our independence and sovereignty and to return all the people and territories we can.
Well, I think the rest of the world has been in awe of the determination, as you describe it, of the Ukrainian people in resisting and fighting back against the Russian invasion. It has been truly something to behold. But as I mentioned in the introduction, your husband is one of, so many hundreds of thousands of men who've joined the Ukrainian army. What's your personal sort of take been on members of your own family having to fight, head to the front line? And if you're speaking honestly, do you feel that there has been any dip in morale as this conflict has dragged on, or does it feel like morale and that determination only gets stronger with every Russian atrocity?
Big question, Lucy. Let me say that I feel like a very ordinary Ukrainian who passed through so many horrors of this war. The only thing that I'm praying almost every day to say thank you that I didn't have anyone to lose from my family. But when I go to the past, to the 2022, and remember everything that my family passed through, my now husband passed through, it's terrible. I was brought up in a small village. My first steps, my first words were done in a very small village in Kherson region, and it's fully destroyed, absolutely. I saw the house of my grandparents, one grandparents, another couple of grandparents. They are just done. You cannot renew them anymore. My parents stayed under occupation for 8 months. My aunt, who is the teacher of Ukrainian language, stayed under occupation for 8 months. And I remember those 8 months when I tried to reach them, when I tried to pass them the humanitarian aid, when they didn't have food enough, when they didn't have electricity, water. But the most important fact, when they were going out and they saw those soldiers, when these soldiers were checking them, when they wanted to take my father, when the tank was standing near the hospital of my mother and she didn't know what to do, and when she was hiding with the children in the basement when they were shelling Kherson. And now my parents and my aunt and uncle, they live in the Kherson region, which was deoccupied, but it's being shelled every day. Literally every day we get the numbers of dead and injured there. And I see how my childhood, my memories are being destroyed every day, and it's terrible. My husband went to the front line in spring. He wasn't enlisted. He volunteered. That's why he was back in some time, and I'm very lucky. But I feel I got that experience of every Ukrainian female who knows what it is to wait until their beloved ones send the message back or respond to the telephone. If there is connection, why doesn't he respond? If there is no connection, where is he? And I know about these terrible situations that he was telling me when they got under attack, when they hardly survived, when somebody leaked the information where they were. And this happens. This is just the war. So it's terrible. And when I look at my people here around and I see what they go through and how traumatized the nation is, I understand how much work we will need to do to recover after the war is done. But I know that Russians did not manage to scare us. And with every attack, massive attack or attack in the front line, we feel even more determined because we are angry. We are not scared. They've done so much horrible things to us. It's very difficult to accept, to forgive, to forget. I don't know how many years it will last until any kind of dialogue with Russians is possible. So it's terrible. It's horrible. And I never wish anyone to go through this. And believe me, people of Ukraine are very, very grateful to every nation who understands this and who stands with us in unity after a year of this terrible war.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear the ordeal that you and your family have been through. And as you say, you are in that sense an ordinary Ukrainian. It's an experience that has been shared by far too many people in your country. But you also clearly exhibit that defiance and spirit that I mentioned. Iuliia, I want to talk to you a bit about your personal knowledge of and relationship with President Zelensky. He is a man, a leader who has just captured the imagination of the world. You were his press secretary in the years leading up to the invasion. How have you sort of reacted to how he has performed? Has he surprised you in any way? Has he grown into the role of wartime leader?
Lucy, I've been working with him for 2 years, for over 2 years, and I think he didn't have any other chance but to grow to a war leader. But I must say that he had always been underappreciated because of his role. He's the most popular image of a comedian, and many opposition leaders and international foreign leaders, they were thinking, here is the comedian, right? But in fact, when I started working with him, I understood he was a very serious person and he was treating everything with high responsibility. He used humor often just to maybe make the situation more comfortable or to warm up the relations with someone new. He was not just joking around as many people could imagine because of his comedian image. And also, very important thing that he was traveling to Donbass that Russia attacked back in 2014. Before the large-scale invasion, the war in Donbass has been lasting for over 8 years. And President Zelensky wanted to be with the people of Donbass. He wanted to be with the soldiers who were fighting Russia there. And he wanted actually to show them that there is the hope for peace because he was trying to reach this peace with Russia, which obviously was not possible. So we were traveling to Donbass, and I saw him in the situation where actually the war risks were already there in his life, where he was not afraid to go to the front lines, to shake soldiers' hands, when he wasn't afraid of shelling. Even in one situation, when we were already returning back, Russians started shelling the place where Ukrainian soldiers were, and he insisted on returning back. Not all the group, I stayed at the place, and the journalists who were with us, and some people from the delegation, but he, his bodyguards, and some of his close people went back. And I remember he said that, what leader would I be if I left my soldiers when the shelling started? So for him, it was a personal matter to show that he, as a leader, wanted to be with his soldiers. He wanted to show Russians that he wasn't afraid. So when he was offered to leave the country and to become a leader in exile, I actually was surprised by this offer because knowing Zelensky, I knew he would not agree. And actually, if there is any kind of a mission for every person in his life, that was his mission, to stay with Ukraine. You know, not the richest country, the country with probably weak institutions, but the country with determined people, with millions of people who believe in this country, and to tell us that we are not victims, we are fighters, and we can win. So this is actually the first thing that he has done. He stayed and he united the people of Ukraine for this. And the second thing, he managed to unite the whole civilized world to help Ukraine and to stay united against this unprovoked and brutal war of Russia.
Yeah, you make it so clear that the war possibly could have taken a different path if a different leader had been in charge of Ukraine at the time. Now, not to take away anything from Zelensky's sort of personal bravery and leadership skills, but and I think many people have marveled at the sort of amazing PR effort around him, right down to his look. We often see him in the khaki t-shirt and sort of fatigues. You've obviously acted as his press secretary. Can you tell us a bit about the sort of the network of advisors who are carefully crafting his image, helping him decide where to go and what to do in order to sort of boost the war spirit in the country?
Well, let me say that definitely there were a lot of advisors during the war. I'm not sure how this network exactly worked, but definitely it started very organically, very naturally, for the reason that I know that for 56 days at least, President Zelensky was sitting in the basement and he was going out just to show that he is in Kiev and to talk sometimes to maybe people or journalists or record the video, but he mostly was staying under the ground for all the time, for the reason that there were a lot of groups who tried to kill him. I'm sure you know about this, and for the reason that there was the threat for every person who stayed in Kiev. The city wasn't as the city we know. It was just the fortress with checkpoints, with guns, with no like shops or restaurants. it worked as a military fortress. So at that moment, no one was thinking about how the president was actually looking. His beard was very natural way to appear. He had this clothes that was very comfortable and very organic in this war. And I think there were no many opportunities to get many types of clothes, so they got what was possible and what many people who volunteers were getting too. So it appeared that it started very organically. Right now, definitely he supports this type of image, and with this, in this way, he tries to show to many leaders of the world when he travels or when he goes online on a video or through the journalists that the war is still here, and it's very important because when people live very far and for them the time passes, the war can sound little bit secondary, third, or any other kind of background. But for us, it's very realistic right here. Even if there is no missile right now behind my window, I know that many people are still in trenches. They are being shelled, that we need more ammunition, that many people die every day, civilians and military. So with his image, he tries to remind people that the war is still ongoing. And I think it was a very successful way to show. But again, it started very naturally, very organically. Many people wanted to advise. I think it's not a very systematic base from what I know, but definitely people try to support Ukraine because if we talk, then we tell, and then there is opportunity that we are heard. And then the information actually influences the reality. And we remind people, we expect that people stay united. And 80% of Ukrainians believe that we wouldn't be able to manage in this war without the unity of the West and the unity of the civilized countries.
Well, let's move on to that subject. As you say, Zelensky has travelled outside. I was among those who got to see him when he addressed both houses of Parliament in Westminster Hall some months ago, which was a startling moment. How watertight, how rock solid does Western support feel to you, and particularly when it comes to the United States? We know that there are growing noises in the Republican Party that want the US to take a more isolationist line, to spend less money financing the Ukraine war. Are you worried?
There are a lot of concerns here, not only on political level. Every Ukrainian now reads the news all the time to figure out what's going on. Even those people who were fully apolitical, believe me, they already know the names of senators or, the name of politicians around the world. So the thing is that we pretty understand from our experience that the war fatigue comes at some point. And definitely we would like to manage with the unity of the West as long as it's needed. But there is understanding that nobody needs this war for years and years. And this is a very important thing, that Ukraine actually doesn't want to ask and beg for more money, for more ammunition and more weapons. We survived, but we need to manage the situation as most fair, with justice as most possible. The thing is, if we give up Russia the territories, if we forget and forgive the war crimes that Russia is doing here, then it's disrespect to international law. I mean, what is the essence of international law if it does not work, right? So we survived. But the thing is that we have more work to do right now. It's again to kick out Russian army as much as possible from Ukrainian territory, to do the homework of the reforms here, to make our economy and our army stronger. Perhaps to join any kind of units that we will be able to join, to be stronger with the partners, but also to keep Russia accountable for the war crimes, for the atrocities that it has already done and is doing right now when we are talking together. So the thing is that it's not about just getting money, right? It's about getting justice here. And let me remind you that everybody is in the dispute about around 300 billion of Russian assets, Russian finances that are kept in the West. And if we are talking about this important issue. Do you, as a citizen of Western country, need to pay for the recovery of Ukraine? I will say no, because Russia has done this, and there are Russian money in the Western countries. So Russia needs to pay with this. And so when we talk about the war, the one thing is to keep the country safe, to keep Ukrainians safe, to stop this brutality that is happening there. Another thing is to find safeguards for the future, that Russia does not attack for the future, because their aggression is not going less. Another thing is to find justice, and we need unity for this too, to keep those criminals, war criminals, accountable. And actually, the fourth question is to help Ukraine recover exactly with Russian money, so that Western people don't pay this money. And I think all these questions are on the table with the politicians and diplomats. They are negotiated at different levels. And as a Ukrainian, I want to say that we also follow this very, very on really closely. As Ukrainian, I want to say that we closely follow all of these developments. And it's not just about the money. It's about justice. Let me just say that no country in the world wants peace more than Ukraine. But there is no way how to achieve it and to stop Russia, to find the safeguards and to find justice right now. And that's what Ukraine is looking for with all the Western partners.
What is the big ask for the West now? What is the most pressing help that the West could be giving to Ukraine?
Well, it's an urgency for the reason that we are preparing the counteroffensive. The weather is getting better and we need to have enough ammunition and weaponry. There was a huge delay with this, and I know that Ukrainian army is running out of ammunition. Unfortunately, Russia has been developing as an aggressor for dozens of years. That's why they have, bigger army and more ammunition and more weapons. And they are trying to go against sanctions, to avoid them. And they are trying to make deals with Iran and North Korea, which is not very helpful. So one thing is to help with urgency with ammunition and weapons, to have this counteroffensive as most successful as possible. The other is not to forget about sanctions. We just cannot allow Russia to get rid of this, war crimes and to forget about them as fast, so fast, just in a year. And the third one is to be prepared for the things that I said, to hold Russian war criminals accountable, and to help Ukraine recover, and the most justice way with the Russian assets.
And just finally, Iuliia, something I've been struck by, I'm sure many people have this past week, is the extraordinary testimony from a couple of Wagner Group mercenaries talking about war crimes that they personally have been involved in Bakhmut. Can you just explain your reaction to some of those testimonies, including killing children at point blank range, killing prisoners of war?
Lucy, it's a very personal thing for every Ukrainian, and the even worse news that I read after that they admitted that everything they told was less than 10% of what they've done. The week started from another awful news, how Russian army was beheading a live Ukrainian soldier. I'm afraid even to think how many of these atrocities are there on their telephones, and how many absolutely disgusting and inhuman things they've done to the people just because of hatred, just because we're different, just because they stand for autocratic way of life. When I am telling about the war, I don't want, to be the one who is victimizing ourselves or who is just complaining. I just want every person who listens to this to imagine that this is happening to your people, and we are not different from anyone else. And, every word that I'm saying about this justice, it will show to Ukrainians that there is the way that the world can exist, and that the way is really determined to keep the international law in order. Because what's the purpose to waste so much finances for you? for so many organizations that have so many beautiful words if they wouldn't be able to hold the war criminals accountable. We are proud to be Ukrainians and we want to be treated equal. We suffer here our lives to stand for the values that every one of you appreciates, to have a choice in life, to have a market economy, to have dreams and to live these dreams. In many ways, we are the same as you and we appreciate democracy. And Putin probably is so angry at us because we show the biggest signs of democracy here. If Ukraine gives up, if you give up Ukraine, there is a big chance that there will not be democracy in the whole region near Russia for a long, long time. So my message is, it's not about politics. It's about human values. It's about the values that you believe in, live in your everyday life. And we beg you to finish this with justice. At least, to have this feeling that we live the life, appropriate life.
Well, you mount a very compelling and emotional argument there. Iuliia Mendel, thank you for joining Frontline with Lucy Fisher for Times Radio today.
Lucy, thank you for having me and thank you for telling the story of Ukraine.
Thank you. And thanks to Louis Sykes, who was our producer.